thought what they will do if you succeed in killing him?
We have our orders.
The people who gave you those orders are safe in London. They don't have to suffer the reprisals.
Think what they will do to this country. The world will come down on our heads.
It's a chance we have to take.
My God, they send us children. Do you imagine we didn't think of assassinating Heydrich?
Why didn't you then?
Because we know what the consequences will be.
We are soldiers. This is a war. If you won't help us, we'll do it alone.
We never said we would not help you. What do you want us to do?
Where is the best place to kill him?
Good evening. That was a scene from Operation Daybreak, which opens next week, quite undeterred by the fact that it isn't even finished yet. And this, I fancy, reveals an awe-inspiring nonchalance on the part of all concerned. Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. Meanwhile, we can also offer you Hustle, a cops and hookers melodrama starring Burt Reynolds and Catherine Deneuve, and Spanish Fly, an alleged British comedy involving Leslie Phillips and Terry Thomas. Furthermore, I'll be chatting briefly to Marty Feldman as he basks self-exiled in the California sunshine and looking back at the vast and wasted talents of Tony Hancock, who's the subject of these two books. But for openers, let's turn our attention to Burt Reynolds and Catherine Deneuve in Hustle. As the advertisements inform us, she's the call girl, he's the cop. They both take their job seriously. Well, I should hope so indeed. Frivolous or idle call girls are simply not to be tolerated in a decent society. The whole crux of Hustle is that Los Angeles Police Lieutenant Reynolds is in love with hooker Deneuve and dreams wistfully of making an honest woman of her. It's a relationship which, as he explains in this scene, is not without its difficulties.
What are you trying to tell me?
That I care about you. That I care about you, but I'm sorry. Oh, shit. I'm starting to draw dirty pictures about what you do. I'm not that tough. I have no right to draw pictures around our relationship. But it's happening. I'm falling off of the arrangement.
But you understand that this is your problem, not mine. You're the only man that ever brought compassion into bed with me. I never felt that from any man. And I love you for that.
Is that enough?
No.
As we follow the sometimes turbulent love affair between the two main characters, we also become involved in Mr. Reynolds' investigation into the death, was it suicide or was it murder, of a young girl who was mixed up in a much more tawdry vice ring. Just to complicate matters, Mr. Reynolds has to cope with the girl's vengeful father, played by Ben Johnson, a crooked lawyer, portrayed by Eddie Albert, who's also one of Mr. Deneuve's clients and demands rather more personal services than a bedtime phone call, and a homicidal maniac. As you can imagine, it's a busy sort of film, and I believe it's trying to tell us something about the need to temper justice and law enforcement with compassion and understanding. I didn't find it particularly convincing, but it's directed ably enough by Robert Aldrich and performed more than competently by Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Deneuve. Apart from anything else, it was pleasant to find Mr. Reynolds breaking away from the kind of West Side Bertie Wooster he's been playing recently. Here he is in action, confronting the aforementioned homicidal maniac with the aid of his assistant, Paul Winfield.
He's gonna kill me! Please! Oh, please!
You've been busy, Jerry. You should have got here sooner, Lieutenant.
A long time, Jerry.
I could do a lot of damage with this. Yeah, I can see that, old buddy.
Don't call me that. I used to like you, man.
I still like you, Jerry.
You screwed me! They took my friend away. They gave me electric shocks.
I'm gonna stop that, Jerry. I'm not gonna let him do that to you anymore.
You're full of shit! Just like everybody. Well, this cow goes too, man. Just like the others.
You hurt that lady, they're gonna put those wires in your ears again. You don't want that to happen, do you?
Sit down on your knees.
Oh, please, Master, do what he says. He's crazy. He's gonna kill me.
Shut up! Sit down on your knees.
What?
Get down on your goddamn knees!
Oh, please, I'm so afraid.
Right him down on my knees. Do whatever you want me to do. Let the lady go.
Now she tried to strangle me? Didn't you, you goddamn cow? I'm gonna kill her, man!
That's wrong, Jerry. Your mother strangled you. This lady doesn't even know you.
Cow! A goddamn strangling cow! I'm gonna kill her!
Let the lady go.
It's over!
The native film industry still exists mainly in the shadow of the American industry as an economic and cultural colony of Hollywood. Two-thirds of the finance for British films still comes, one way or another, from the United States. So the White Paper's recommendations suggest, among other things, that more public finance should be made available for film production, that the total investment in British films should be increased to at least £40 million a year, compared with the present £25 million, that an additional £1 million should come from a tax on box office receipts, and that the government should contribute £5 million. Splendid ideas, I have little doubt. But on the other hand, what is the British film industry? Well, from a commercial point of view, it's Spanish Fly, it's the bawdy adventures of Tom Jones, it's the confessions of a pop performer, and it's the Carry On series. Compared with the others, the Carry On pictures are classics of wit and humour, and at least have the merit of honest vulgarity. I can't envisage anyone, whether private entrepreneur or government department, wishing to invest money in the commercial British cinema until it raises its sights a little higher than that area between the navel and the knees, and stops trying to cater only for those who are most easily pleased. Still, let's not get bogged down right now in that kind of argument. If we're considering the British film industry as a colony of Hollywood, it's worth looking into the case of Marty Feldman, who had to go to America to find recognition as an international comedian, although it's also fair to say that he stayed there for very different reasons. I spoke to him in Hollywood a few weeks ago, just after the opening of Gene Wilder's The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes's Smarter Brother. This business of writing, starring, directing is obviously catching because you're about to do this now, aren't you?
Well, it's not really new. Buster Keaton did it, you know, Chaplin did it, Orson Welles. A few people have done it, you know, Jacques Tatte's done it for years. I'm not starring, though, and I don't want to play leads, I never did. This is a fact, I'm not kidding. Even in my own fantasies, you know, everybody has fantasies. I always play a supporting part in my own fantasies. It's a fact, you know.
What a psychiatrist would make of that, I don't know.
When I have these fantasies about soccer, that I'm playing for Chelsea and I'm whipping down the wing and everything. I'm not scoring. I'm making that beautiful cross over into the middle, where it was Osgood then. He's gone now, but Osgood would be nodding it in my fantasy. I was Peter Lorre in my fantasy, never Humphrey Bogart, you know. And I still feel that way. I don't really want... I'm not equipped by nature for leads anyway. Or even Chelsea. Oh, God, time is not stale, my infinite variety, is it?
Not a bit. So you've got yourself a supporting part in this film you're going to direct?
Yes, it's like about 60-40 in comparison with the male lead, you know. I'm playing an identical twin with someone who I hope will be someone like Burt Reynolds. We're going to be identical twins.
Yes.
But it's mainly about the leading man. I play a bigger part than I played in Frankenstein or Sherlock, but still where I really want to be, which is one step down, you know. So I can concentrate more on what I really want to do, which is directing, you see.
And you're more or less based here, aren't you? Because you've just bought yourself a house in Beverly Hills. Nice Christmas present.
Not Beverly Hills.
Not Beverly Hills.
Not the Hills of Beverly, never. No, as a matter of principle, I wouldn't live in the Hills of Beverly. If I could afford it, I wouldn't. No, it's on Laurel Canyon, Studio City, El Cheapo. That's what I like, where I can shop at a local supermarket.
But that seems to indicate that you're going to be you're prepared to settle down in Los Angeles.
No, I've got a house in London. I'm prepared to settle down wherever the work is, Larry, you know. I'm going back to England to make a film in April. No, wherever the work is, where anybody will hire me, I'll go there, you know. If the film industry goes to Czechoslovakia, I'll go and move to Czechoslovakia. It happens to be here at the moment, so I happen to be here at the moment. Plus which I owe a lot of back tax, and I couldn't earn enough money in England to pay my back tax. Literally.
Yeah,
so I have to come here in order to pay the tax man in England.
Yeah, it's an insoluble problem if you stay there.
Well, it's not insoluble. I've solved it by working here and visiting there. That's the only way I can solve it for the moment.
Your three inspirations are... Can we have a close-up of that, do you think?
The Father, the Son and the Holy Ghost, Buster Keaton, Stern Laurel, Harpo Marx. There should be Spike Milligan there too, but you can only have a Holy Trinity, you know.
Well, Oliver Hardy might go in that lot too.
No, Spike would come ahead. They're just the people who've kind of very important to the way I think about comedy and what I do, you know.
Well, I'm not about to argue with Marty Feldman's Holy Trinity, though I'd be inclined to make it a foursome by adding W.C. Fields. Still, we've already shown clips from his latest film, The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, so let's see if we can determine what influence that Holy Trinity had on him in his first film, Every Home Should Have One.
Would you like a Swedish chocolate?
No, thanks. Delicious.
You do not like that one?
Oh, no, it's lovely. It's a very good likeness. I imagine. I imagine it's a good likeness.
Is it because I'm untired?
Unattired. Only, we don't go in much for that in England, you see. Over here, nudity stands for, sex.
You mean here in England you stand for sex?
Well, not always.
Well, the girl in that scene was, of course, Julie Edge, or as Marty Feldman always calls her, the Naked Edge. Well, as Mr. Feldman said, it's not entirely new for a comedian or anyone else to wish to write, direct and appear in his own films. In his book on Tony Hancock, in a new series of publications called The Entertainers, Philip Oakes writes, if it had been possible, he would have liked to have written the script, performed all the parts and conducted the orchestra. Philip Oakes was Hancock's friend, occasional drinking companion and collaborator on the film The Punch and Judy Man, and his book is an affectionate memoir of one of the finest comedians this country has ever produced. There was a time when I knew Tony Hancock fairly well, and it seems to me that the tragedy of the man was that he combined an alarming lack of self-confidence with delusions of grandeur. It was this latter unattractive quality which caused him to cast off first Sid James, his radio and television co-star, and then his writers, Alan Simpson and Ray Galton. Philip Oakes generously ascribes these decisions to a feeling on Hancock's part that he wished to move on into new areas of comedy into which they couldn't follow him. But I've always felt that he was jealous of their share in his success. And another book, Hancock, by his second wife, Freddie Hancock, and the journalist David Nathan, just released in paperback, seems to bear that out. I do know that Hancock's unsurpassed popularity on television here was not enough for him. In the last years of his career, before he killed himself in Australia at the age of 44, he told me several times of grandiose plans he'd conceived to make himself an international star by way of American TV, cabaret and films, but none of them came to anything. It was in an attempt to break away from what he thought of as the insular character of the lad from Railway Cuttings, East Cheam, created for him by Simpson and Galton, that he turned to Philip Oakes to help him write The Punch and Judy Man. An odd subject, I must say, for a man who dreamed of international success. In this scene, we follow Hancock, the Punch and Judy Man, bemoaning the fact that he has to appear at a garden party.
I must be stark raving mad. Yes, mad. That might explain it. Wonder if I got a temperature. I wouldn't be surprised. Gala night at Piltdown Bay. 60 years of sheer misery. Rain. Rain, that might stop it. No. No, not a hope. No, not that lot. You fool, 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 fool! And that didn't help either. Oh, good day, Lady Beres. Yes, Mrs. Palmer. Of course, Mrs. Palmer. Good luck, Mrs. Palmer. Some tea. China, of course. How charming. How very delightful. Drop your litter in the bin. Drop your litter in the bin. Otherwise, it would be a sin. She looked very sweet as she walked down the street, and that's why dark as a ball.
Well, in his suicide note, Hancock wrote, "Things seem to go wrong too many times." But what I believe really went wrong, quite apart from the excessive drinking and the remorseless urge towards self-destruction, was the simple fact that he would not and could not accept that he was a brilliant interpreter of comedy, but not necessarily a good creator of comedy. Still, let's return to the current releases and Operation Daybreak. This, as I said earlier, opens next week and is based on a genuine attempt during World War II to assassinate Reinhard Heydrich, the acting Reichsprotector of Bohemia and Moravia. Heydrich is played by Anton Diffring, and the three would-be assassins by Timothy Bottoms, whom you probably remember from the last picture show, Martin Shaw and Anthony Andrews. It opens in London next week, but the latest news I had was that Warner Brothers was still recutting it, putting in more love scenes, apparently. The mind boggles. How many love scenes can there be in an assassination attempt? Well, next week all will be vouchsafed to us, and I'll be reporting on the film later on. Meantime, here's a scene from early in the picture when the bold assassins are waiting for a train carrying Heydrich to come within range.
It's coming. Last month, the British Film Institute announced that its 1975 award for the most original and imaginative new film had been won by the Greek epic The Travelling Players, directed by Theodore Angelopoulos and shown at last year's London Film Festival. The BFI also announced the special award to the British directors Kevin Brownlow and Andrew Mollo for their film Winstanley, which won a good deal of praise at the London Festival but still hasn't found a distributor. And that takes us all the way back to what I was saying earlier, namely that the British film business isn't really about serious films at all, but about smutty jokes. Until last week, The Travelling Players didn't have a distributor either, but now I hear it's been taken up by a new company and should open in London in a couple of months' time. It's a long and complex picture, a 4-hour examination of Greek political history from 1936 to 1952, as reflected in the fortunes of a travelling theatre company. In this clip, we see the company at work under the menacing gaze of the Gestapo.
Καλή σου μέρα, Γκόλφο.
Μιλάχοι και μας βλέπουνε.
Κανένας δεν μας βλέπει. Παρά του λόγου τα πουλιά και τα βουνά τριγύρω.
Και τα πουλιά.
Τι έπαθες? Τι είναι τούτα, Γκόλφο? Έτσι θα κάνουμε χωριό. Απ' τον Αϊτόε στιάχτης.
Τα ύπατά μου κόπηκαν. Σαν να ήταν ανθρώπου ίσκιο σε μένα φάνηκε.
Μη σκιάζεσαι, δε σου είπα. Μας βλέπει μόνο ο Θεός. Το θέλημά του θα ήταν να αγαπηθούμε έτσι πιστά και τιμημένα. Για δες τη γύρω, Γκόλφο μου, ετούτη τη θαμπούρα που σαν κατάχνια έπεσε γυροβολιά. Δεν μοιάζει σαν σκέπασμα θεόριχτο που τούτη δά την ώρα από τα ουράνια έπεσε εμάς τους δυο να κρύψει από τις γλώσσες τις κακές και τα κακά τα μάτια.
Εσένα έχω στο χασμό, εσένα όνειρό μου. Και όντας την εικόνα μου ανάμω το καντήλι, στην Παναγιά τη Δέσποινα, για σε περικαλιό μου.
The Travelling Players will be shown at the National Film Theatre on Sunday when Hugh Jenkins, the Minister for the Arts, will present the award to the film's director. Another film to be shown on Sunday, this time at the Collegiate Theatre, is Frederick Wiseman's Welfare. Wiseman may not be generally known to the mass of cinema audiences because he makes documentaries, and documentaries don't often get a wide release. But in his own field, he has few, if any, peers. Welfare, which is being screened to raise money for the Other Cinemas West End Theatre, deals with the relationship of people on the dole to authority and with the way that authority is used and abused. Wiseman's method with this film, as with others like High School, Juvenile Court and Law and Order, was to film hundreds of hours of footage so that finally his subjects forgot all about the cameras and behaved quite naturally. Here's an example
A welfare worker, confused by the intricacies of one of his cases and virtually strangled in red tape, seeks advice from one of his superiors.
She wants the case transferred to her name because the checks are going out in his name. I think we just don't do that. On her say, we'll have to find out where he is.
Yeah, well,
meaning write to his employer, see what address is there.
Right, yes.
Check housing, because they live in public
Right.
housing,
Yes,
see
we
if
have to
he's
be-
listed
right.
on that.
Send a letter, a registered certified letter.
Now,
to
you
her
should
address.
also know that she says her children are starving.
A what?
She wants some money. Do you want to give her any?
Well, they can't,
Okay.
yeah, they can't close it on that. They have to...
No, the closing, yes, they will not close it.
No, they have to...
But she wants the money today. Of course, they can't give her any unless the case is reclassified into her name.
Well, they have to reclassify it.
Well, they can't do that until we check it out.
No. Well, I don't know how they... Now, let me think. They have to reclassify it to her name before they can give it right under the check.
Right.
However, she has a perfect right to ask for a fair hearing, despite the hearing she had upstairs.
No, she doesn't need a fair hearing. We've already decided her case is not to be closed because she
fine.
did at the
Okay,
last minute
then
bring the
what
pay
I
stub.
say is they would I would suggest...
But now she's saying don't count the pay stubs because the guy does not live
Right.
there any longer.
If she's without funds, they have to service her financially. They'll have to make the switch on the basis of our
Well, you
ongoing
really shouldn't say that
investigation.
because that's the group. They'll have to
That's their
decide that.
decision, but that's
So
what
I'll
they'll
just
have to
work
do.
on our interest.
Right. They'll have to make whatever changes necessary to service her, and on the basis of our investigation, we'll either...
Miss Horwich had made a mistake. You did bring the pay stubs, or your husband did, whoever did. We had to verify where your husband is now. Did you tell Lillian Wallhouses that he had moved out?
Yes,
So he's off their records.
yes, because I have the new lease they sent in the mail yesterday for me to fill out for that.
Are you married to him?
Yes, I'm legally married to him. I have my papers here.
There were no such problems, says Mr. Speechley, rendered almost speechless with frustration and bitterness anywhere else in the world. Well, as I said, I've no axe to grind on behalf of Yes songs, although I did get a good deal of innocent amusement and pleasure from Ain't Misbehavin'. And in view of that and all the fulminations of the government white paper, it seems, on the face of it at least, rather a pity that Mr. Speechley's company already spends 6 months a year in America and is now thinking of emigrating entirely. It strikes me that the British film industry doesn't just need more money, it needs an entirely new approach. However, that's all for this week. Next Friday, I'll be reviewing the new Visconti picture, Conversation Piece, and Sam Peckinpah's film, The Killer Elite. But for the moment, let me just leave you with the Yes in concert. Good night.
The time between the notes relates the color to the scene. Constant moment, trials dislocate, and so it seems. The space between the focus shapes the same knowledge of love. The song that just demand the time, the social tempest rules the bar. According to the man who showed his astronaut to space, to tell the world apart to redeem all the human race. I shook my head and smiled and whispered now we're all about the place. On the hill we built the silence of the night.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4.
How about that then? Good evening. That was a quick glimpse of a strange new western about a master gunfighter called Finlay, a sort of Mr. Finlay's casebook, if you like. Well, we'll come back to that later on. I'll also be reviewing Operation Daybreak, which is about the true assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, and Russian Roulette, which is about a fictional attempt to assassinate Mr. Kosygin, and proves once again that though truth may be stranger than fiction, fiction is nearly always a lot dafter. The best film of the week, though, is a new version of Raymond Chandler's Farewell, My Lovely, with Robert Mitchum excellent as Philip Marlowe, and Charlotte Rampling very good too as the mysterious Mrs. Grail. The story begins when Marlowe is dragooned by an enormous ex-convict called Moose Malloy into looking for his girlfriend, Velma. Malloy, a man who, as Chandler so aptly puts it, is as inconspicuous as a tarantula on a slice of angel food, drags Marlowe into the club where Velma used to sing. Incidentally, Moose Malloy there is played by Jack O'Halloran, a heavyweight boxer who can't be as tough as he looks because he was beaten by Joe Bugner. Anyway, Marlowe moves on through the story, getting beaten up, shot at, drugged, threatened and pursued by police and heavies alike in search of the elusive Velma. I won't go into the plot because those who've read Chandler will know it already, and those who haven't can work out the complexities for themselves. Purists will be distressed to learn that one of the minor villains has had a change of sex, for no good reason that I can ascertain, and that there's a bit of extraneous business involving a small black boy, which introduces a most uncharacteristic note of sentimentality into Marlowe's character. Marlowe was never a sentimentalist. He was a sort of down-market romantic, which is very different. Still, these deplorable lapses apart, it seemed to me that Dick Richards' film was surprisingly true to the general spirit of the original, and I was rather impressed by Robert Mitchum. Of course, he's too old for the role, but I thought he was quite as good a Philip Marlowe as anyone else who's played the part, and that includes Humphrey Bogart in The Big Sleep, Robert Montgomery in The Lady in the Lake, James Garner in The Little Sister, which was retitled Marlowe, and Dick Powell in the first version of Farewell, My Lovely. We'll have a look at Dick Powell in a minute or two. Meanwhile, here's Mitchum in his first encounter with Charlotte Rampling. Any passing similarity between her and Lauren Bacall is probably not altogether coincidental.
Mr. Grail hasn't been feeling too well for some time. He tires easily. Hell with polite drinking.
Was he an old friend, Mr. Marriott?
Sort of. He accompanied me places.
Well, I guess he had to tell me something to get me to go along.
A very good-looking man to be in this kind of business.
Well, I hope you don't hold that against me.
Poor Lynn. He was rather a heel, but to die like that is terrible.
Did you trust him?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know. I trust some people. I trust you. Why don't you come over here and sit beside me?
You know, I've been thinking about that for some time. Ever since you first crossed your legs, to be exact.
These damn things are always up around your neck. Do you do this sort of thing often?
No, I'm usually pretty busy. At the monastery, praying with the other monks. How long did you know Marriott?
Oh, years. I liked him. I'd like to know who killed him. When'd you find out? I'll pay you, of course. A lot.
A lot. Marriott lived like he had a lot. He wasn't borrowing from you, was he?
You're a little old-fashioned, aren't you? Your name's Phil, isn't it?
Philip, what's yours?
Helen, kiss me.
Well, the man at the door there was Mr. Grail, who, as we heard earlier, wasn't feeling very well. And I suppose any man has a right to look a bit sick if he finds his wife rampling on a sofa with Robert Mitchum. Farewell, My Lovely opened in London yesterday. It was first filmed in 1944, with Dick Powell in the lead. The trouble is, of course, that to the true Chandler enthusiast, which means all right-thinking people, no actor is ideally cast as Philip Marlowe, because Marlowe is exactly like whoever happens to be reading one of the books at the time. Chandler himself thought Dick Powell was about the best of the screen Marlowes because he suggested the character's vulnerability. But I think Chandler would have been quite pleased with Mitchum too. Still, here's an opportunity to compare both of them. Dick Powell, having been drugged by the wicked Dr. Amthor, he who in the new version has become a wicked lady brothel keeper, goes off into a bad case of hallucinations.
Dirty, stupid little man in a dirty, stupid world. One spot of brightness on you and you'd still be that. Isn't that so? I'm glad you hit me. It helps. Helps me a great deal.
The black pool opened up at my feet again, and I dived in. Next thing I remember, I was going somewhere. It was not my idea. The rest of it was a crazy, coked-up dream. I had never been there before.
Where's the necklace?
Should have hit me.
Was open, but the smoke didn't move. It was a gray web woven by 1,000 spiders. I wondered how they got them to work together.
Farewell, My Lovely, 32 years ago, and also known under the inferior title Murder, My Sweet. In another film which opened this week, Russian Roulette, George Segal stars as an unlikely Royal Canadian Mounted Policeman trying to foil a preposterous plot to assassinate Kosygin while the Russian Prime Minister is on a state visit to Vancouver. The director is Lou Lombardo, a former editor who's cut a number of films for Robert Altman and Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch. Well, Mr. Lombardo has learned quite a lot from his former masters, particularly Peckinpah, and so the absurd story progresses at a brisk pace with a great deal of mayhem and a lot of explicit violence. I'm not going to tell you much about the plot of this one either, because, frankly, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why half the corpses got to be corpses, but that's probably because I never knew who they were in the first place. In short, the script is fairly awful, although Vancouver looks very pretty, and Mr. Segal is engaging and desperate in about equal measures. On the credit side, our hero is given an attractive girlfriend in the shape of Christina Rains, but on the debit side, there's an absolutely profligate waste of such splendid character actors as Gordon Jackson, Louise Fletcher, who's up for an Oscar for her performance in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Denham Elliott, all of whom make a brief impact and are then discarded. This is particularly irritating in the case of Mr. Elliott, who plays an undercover special branch man. As we can see in this initial meeting with Mr. Siegel, there's nobody who can look quite as seedy as Mr. Elliott when he sets his mind to it.
Still pissing down?
It stops and it starts.
Yeah. Shaver or CMP? Pettipees, special branch. Commander. Can I get you another beer? Oh, yeah, thank you. McEwen's.
Right.
Denham Elliott seen stealing there like an habitual criminal. I suppose the significant point about The Master Gunfighter is that it was adapted from a Japanese film called Goyo-kin. This probably explains why the central character is not only a master gunfighter but also a master samurai swordsman, and for all I know to the contrary, an international clog dancer as well. It's a very peculiar western set in California in 1836, when the remnants of the formerly powerful Spanish settlers were struggling for survival against the incoming hordes of Americans. In order to pay their taxes and so retain their land, the Spaniards keep raiding Indian villages to steal their hidden gold and slaughter all the inhabitants, a practice upon which Finlay, the master gunfighter, frowns rather sternly. For its attempt to cast a slightly different light on the history of the early West, and for its superb photography by Jack Marter, the film deserves a certain amount of credit. What lets it down, alas, is a very poor script and some rather curious acting. The whole business of gunplay and sword fighting are given a ritualistic, almost mystical treatment, but it's a sad fact of life that it's very hard to be mystical when, like Tom Laughlin, who plays the gunfighter, you're rather short and distinctly on the portly side. So when he goes into his slow build-up as a preamble to slaughtering everyone in sight, Mr. Laughlin looks less like someone summoning up secret and hidden powers than an arthritic ballet dancer trying to get his limbs unlocked. Also, you always know when he's going to kill somebody because he sighs a lot first. In fact, he does more sighing than speaking, which on balance is probably no bad thing. Here he is in action, saving the life of an Indian girl who's fallen into the hands of some rather uncouth cowboys.
Go on, lead.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's no way you're going to get from there to here with that sword, gunfighter. You're going to have to use that gun. you insist, I'm obliged to make you draw. I gave you your chance. This one's gonna be right between your eyes.
Hope you caught the sigh, one of his better sighs that was. The Master Gunfighter also opened this week, and this weekend, Operation Daybreak goes out on general release. This is Louis Gilbert's film about the assassination in Prague in 1942 of the Nazi leader Reinhard Heydrich. Viewed simply as an adventure story, it's very entertaining with a stirring and bloodthirsty climax. Viewed as an attempt to explain what now, with hindsight, seems a lunatic enterprise, or as a tribute to the village of Lidice, which was obliterated by the Nazis in retaliation for the killing, it adds precious little to the total of human knowledge. The film could have done with a lot less of the unconvincing romantic interest and a good deal more psychological insight, but the intention presumably was to make historical drama rather than historical comment. The leader of the assassins is played by the American Timothy Bottoms, with full use of the one expression at his command. But there are more interesting performances by his fellow assassins, Martin Shaw and Anthony Andrews, and also by Anton Diffring, adding Heydrich to the long list of Nazi monsters he's been called upon to portray. Here now we can see all but Martin Shaw at the moment when the assassins make their move. Believe it or not, that, I'm reliably informed, is what actually happened. Still, they got him in the end, although what good that did for the people of Czechoslovakia, I shouldn't like to say. But now let's turn our attention to the National Film Theatre, which is running a season of Alexander Korda pictures until the end of March. Korda was the Hungarian who, until his death 20 years ago, was the most flamboyant and successful producer-director the British film industry has yet seen. In the late 1930s particularly, he was able to challenge even the Hollywood moguls, not only in the size of his pictures, but in the scope of his nepotism. In Hollywood, when Louis B. Mayer promoted his daughter's husband to high office in MGM, somebody remarked, "The son-in-law also rises." And in the same way, in Britain, during Korda's heyday, people used to say bitterly, "It's not enough to be Hungarian." But they were wrong. It was. Nevertheless, Korda turned out a number of classic pictures such as Things to Come, the screen version of H.G. Wells' vision of the future, The Man Who Could Work Miracles, The Thief of Baghdad, which is still my favourite Arabian Nights fantasy, Anna Karenina starring Vivian Leigh, and of course The Third Man. All those are among the films which are being shown in the NFT season. And among them too is The Scarlet Pimpernel, made in 1934 and starring Leslie Howard. Here he is as both the elusive Pimpernel and the foppish Sir Percy Blakeney.
We must match courage with courage, and cunning with still greater cunning if we're to do anything at all. We're all willing to give our lives, but we must do more than that. We must mask our identities, suffer the humiliation of being taken for fops, fools, nitwits, cowards.
But so many people die every day that could be saved.
Do you think I don't feel that? Do you think I like sitting there in the shadow of the knife, while one head falls after another? People I know and love, innocent people, kindly people, herded like sheep, butchered like cattle, by men who make high-sounding principles an excuse for the most bestial cruelty. Robespierre's liberty, his equality.
Well, sink me if it isn't Colonel Ramsbottom. Well, how are you, Ramsbottom?
Winterbottom, sir!
Ramsbottom, what a ridiculous mistake. Allow me to explain, Colonel.
Here's that ass Blakeney.
Odds blood, this club wants cheering up. Sink me, the place is a mausoleum.
Are you being offensive, sir?
Who, sir? Me, sir? No, sir. Stap me, I'm bubbling over with good humor this morning. Would you believe me, I've just written a masterpiece.
Who, sir? You, sir?
Me, sir.
No, sir.
Yes, sir. All about this mysterious Pimpernel fella. How it came to me, heaven only knows, because it was the busiest moment of the day. Damn me, I was tying my cravat. Well, here it is. The Scarlet Pimpernel, by Sir Percival Blakeney, Baronet.
What?
Well, that's the title. They seek him here. They seek him there. Those Frenchies seek him everywhere. Is he in heaven? Is he in hell? That damned elusive Pimpernel. What?
Ah, me, why don't they make films with that kind of style anymore? Well, since we seem to have touched on nostalgia already, I thought you might like to know that the nostalgia boom is going very strong in Hollywood at the moment. They have, for instance, just made a film about Clark Gable and his marriage to Carole Lombard, a marriage that ended tragically when she was killed in an air crash, near Las Vegas too, and that's a place which nobody in his right mind would literally want to be found dead in. The film is called, revealingly, though not very originally, Gable and Lombard, and the title roles are played by James Brolin and Jill Clayburgh. Well, along with that, Rod Steiger and Valerie Perrine are starring in W.C. Fields and Me, the story of the relationship between that monstrous and glorious comedian and his girlfriend Carlotta Monti. Fields, of course, died of the booze, which must have surprised him rather, because, as he once remarked, "I exercise extreme self-control. I never drink anything stronger than gin before breakfast." Exactly why Hollywood is, as it were, devouring its own entrails by making these pictures is difficult to understand. Perhaps there's a shortage of good news stories, because two companies are planning remakes of King Kong. Dino De Laurentiis has got him first with his version, set in the modern day, and showing that giant monkey plucking jet planes out of the sky over New York. Concorde among them, I shouldn't wonder. The role of the girl who unhappily takes his fancy, the Fay Wray role, if I can say that without dislocating my jaw, is played by Jessica Lange. And to complete this brief survey, may I also add that the British director Michael Winner is making something called One Ton Ton, the dog that saved Hollywood, which is about a canine movie star and appears to be a send-up of Rin Tin Tin. I'm not sure I approve of people sending up Rin Tin Tin. He was a damn sight better actor than most of the two-legged stars Hollywood turned out, except King Kong, of course. And if you don't believe me, have a look at him now. What about that for a bit of acting then? Should have got an Oscar for that, he should. And what's more, he's a lot better looking than most of the two-legged stars as well. Still, as a final addition to this section on All Our Yesterdays, the Gaumont Theatre at Notting Hill is presenting a programme of vintage movies until the end of March. The showings start every day, including Sundays, at 1:30 p.m. And among the films to come are Gold Diggers of 1933 with Dick Powell and Joan Blondell, Fred Astaire and Rita Hayworth in You Were Never Lovelier, and Desire with Marlene Dietrich and Gary Cooper. The season starts this Sunday with Dames, which involves Dick Powell and Joan Blondell again, this time with Ruby Keeler, and 42nd Street, in which Ginger Rogers and Bebe Daniels star with, that's right, Dick Powell. He seems to have been a very busy fellow, that Dick Powell. I expect he knew where the bodies were buried. Anyway, just to round things off, here's a scene from 42nd Street, and I must tell you that 42nd Street, which looks glamorous in this picture, has come down to seedier times. Nowadays, it's the centre of the pornographic sorry. Beg your pardon. Where do you want to take it from?
42nd Street.
Okay. And 42nd Street, in which Ginger Rogers and Bebe Daniels star with, that's right, Dick Powell. Seems to have been a very busy fellow, that Dick Powell. I expect he knew where the bodies were buried. Anyway, just to round things off, here's a scene from 42nd Street. And I have to tell you that 42nd Street, which looks kind of glamorous in this film, has now come down to seedier times. These days, it's the centre of the pornographic movie and book trade in New York. That's show business. I'll be back next week. For now, good night.
Still pissing down?
It stops and it starts.
Yeah.
Shaver or CMP?
Petapes, special branch. Commander.
Can I get you another beer?
Oh, yeah, thank you. McEwen's.
All right. Two McEwen's ales.
Right.
Denham Elliott seen stealing like a master thief. But now let's see a bit more of George Segal, who is, after all, the star of the film. Here he is questioning Richard Romanus as one of the gunmen involved in the plot to kill Kosygin.
Sure we can't do this downtown, huh? Hey, you think I'm kidding, don't you? You think you're not going for a swim? You think we're here just to enjoy the view, right?
Stop right there. Move out.
Move out. Now, come on. You know, you're really crazy, you know that?
Move out.
No, I'm going. God damn it. Right there, go on.
What's the matter with you? You're a cop. You know how guys like me work. I'm a businessman. I get an assignment. I follow through. I make a delivery. I don't know to who. An address. Names. That's all it is to me.
Don't give me this horse shit. Just give me the names.
I can't even, for Christ's sake, pronounce the names, let alone remember them.
Make an effort.
Tell you what. I'm getting 30 grand for this job. It's yours. It's yours. Come on, you don't see 30 grand. You don't get 30 grand your whole freaking lifetime.
Look, I'm late for lunch. Think or swim. Come on.
What's the matter with you?
Think or swim, indeed. You see what I mean about the script. Still, I suppose the significant point about The Master Gunfighter is that it was adapted from a Japanese film called Goyo-kin.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4.
Good evening. In this, the first of a new series of programmes on Sunday nights, I'll be reviewing this year's royal film, The Slipper and the Rose, which is British, and that makes a change, David Bowie's first picture, The Man Who Fell to Earth, which is also British, and The Hindenburg, which isn't British, but which fell to earth even more emphatically than David Bowie. In addition to that, we have some news of the Oscar ceremonies, which take place in Hollywood tomorrow night. And I'll be talking to the former Macaroni Woman of the Year, otherwise known as Sophia Loren, who's been making a film called The Cassandra Crossing in Switzerland. But let's begin with the royal film, whose executive producer, incidentally, is one David Frost, a name that may not be entirely unfamiliar to you. Perhaps I should have started this programme by saying, hello, good evening and welcome. Anyway, the royal film, a particularly appropriate choice this year since it concerns the fraught romance of a royal personage and a commoner. It's a musical called The Slipper and the Rose, and it's much better known as the story of Cinderella. Before we go any further, let's meet some of the dramatis personae, a scene in which Michael Hordern, as the King of Euphrania, insists on giving his son, the Prince, played by Richard Chamberlain, a totally undeserved and indeed unwanted award.
Ah, at last, our dear son. We are what?
Delighted?
Yes, delighted to see you returned. Oh, yes, I have something for you.
Father, Your Majesty.
Kneel, sir.
Father, I do not wish. It would be most inappropriate.
Your Majesty, His Royal Highness has returned.
Of course he's returned. You get more senile every day.
I have returned, Father.
Now you're catching it.
Empty-handed.
Kneel, sir.
Father, this is most embarrassing.
I command you to kneel, sir.
I don't deserve it. I haven't earned it.
Nobody earns this. It's given because I'm the king and I like it. Where's my sword? Oh, that's far too heavy. You know, I was born with the curse of the weak wrists.
Oh, I do so love a ceremony.
Ah, yes. That's better. I dub the... Now, wait a minute. Shouldn't there be something before that?
Yes, indeed, sir. I have it here. Your Majesty, Father, must I...
Yes, of course you must. Let it be known to all here present that by our command, His Royal Highness the Prince Edward Charles Albert George James Richard Augustus Philip has received our gracious favor. Who wrote this?
You did, sir.
Ah, yes. Well, it's magnificent stuff. Well worth paying attention to. From this day henceforth shall be entitled to be known as a Knight Grand Cross of the most illustrious order of St. David the Blessed Martyr.
There's somebody in the room.
Well, over the last few years, the Queen and her family have been subjected to a fair amount of unmitigated rubbish at the annual Royal Film Night. But this time the Queen Mother was given a perfect treat. Anyone who thought the spirit of romance was dead will be reassured to learn that, on the contrary, it's alive and well and living in Brian Forbes. As writer and director, Mr. Forbes makes The Slipper and the Rose into a glorious love story, beautiful to look at, full of humour and sentiment, although skillfully avoiding sentimentality. To this end, he's aided by the sort of cast that most directors can only dream about. Michael Hordern as the King, Kenneth More as the Lord Chamberlain, Dame Edith Evans as the Queen Mum, burbling happily away like Lady Bracknell's granny, Christopher Gable as the Dandini figure, here known simply as John, and a splendidly down-to-earth fairy godmother in Annette Crosby, who refuses to go about glittering in sequins and spangles because, as she rightly points out, it's a most unsuitable costume for a grown woman. Furthermore, there's a catchy Mary Poppins-type score from the Sherman Brothers. And what other kind of score would you expect from the people who wrote the music for Mary Poppins? And, of course, at the centre of the story, there's Richard Chamberlain, ideally cast as the Prince, who in this version loses Cinderella not once but twice, which seems decidedly careless of him, and a charming Cinderella in Gemma Craven, who is cute and fresh and has the soft, plump cheeks of a well-fed dormouse. In short, Mr. Forbes's film, and it's very much Mr. Forbes's film, is exactly what a good fairy tale ought to be, enchanting. So now let's meet Cinderella on her way to the ball.
Suddenly it happens, and the dream comes true. Wonderfully, beautifully it happens, and your world is new. Magically, you're holding the golden prize. Mystically, your castles begin to rise. Suddenly, dizzily, just can't believe it's true. When wonderfully, beautifully, suddenly it happens to you.
And after that, all I can say to the executive producer, Mr. David Frost, is super, David, super, super. Besides, it's very pleasant to be able to start a new series with a celebration of not just one British picture, but two. In the last few months, the native film industry has been on its knees, busily turning out trash. But now, quite apart from The Slipper and the Rose, we also have The Man Who Fell to Earth, which stars David Bowie in a non-singing role as a visitor from another planet who thrives and grows rich and is finally screwed by the establishment. In this scene, early in his rise to the position of an extraterrestrial Citizen Kane, he asks his earthly lieutenant, played by Buck Henry, to assess the value of the inventions Bowie has brought with him.
It means, Mr. Newton, that you can take RCA, Eastman Kodak, and DuPont for starters.
In, say, 3 years, what would this be worth to me?
I'm a lawyer, not an accountant, Mr. Newton. But I'd say it must be something in the area of $300 million.
Not more.
More?
I need more.
What the hell for? I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to sound like that. It's just I'm trying to adjust my mind to all this.
I'll offer you 10% of my net profits, plus 5% of all corporate holdings.
I must think about it all. I'll ask Trevor to take you home.
I don't drive.
Thank you. I have my own driver waiting.
All night?
If you take this assignment, you'll have complete authority below me. I don't want to have contact with anyone except you. When you take this position, Mr. Farnsworth, you'll be able to replace your antiquated sound equipment and buy some of mine.
Buy it?
At cost, naturally.
Perhaps you're not so different after all, Mr. Newton.
I suppose The Man Who Fell to Earth could be interpreted as a religious allegory, or more simply as an illustration of how the human race will always destroy what it doesn't understand. I don't think its message is terribly profound in any event, but that doesn't matter too much because it's a remarkable piece of filmmaking. It's rather too long, at times it's self-indulgent and repetitious, and sometimes it's a bit too mysterious for its own good. For instance, I can't see how David Bowie came into possession of the sophisticated technological information on which he bases his fortune, because as far as one can tell, the only form of transport on his planet is a kind of monorail train, apparently constructed out of dried cow dung, and nobody will convince me that anyone ever fell to earth in that. On the other hand, I think it's reasonable to overlook such flaws because Nicholas Roeg, the director who made Performance and Don't Look Now, is a genuinely creative filmmaker, a man who controls and marshals his images to overwhelming effect. The Man Who Fell to Earth is visually fascinating and intellectually interesting, to say the least. There's an excellent performance from Buck Henry, a good one from Rip Torn as a libidinous scientist, and the love interest is convincingly provided by Candy Clark. As for David Bowie, well, with that orange hair and strange androgynous face, I'm not at all sure that he isn't a visitor from another planet in any case. He's ideally cast, I'll say that, but whether he can add acting ability to the other ambivalent things he does remains to be seen. He's very effective in this film, but how will he fare under a less sensitive director than Nicholas Roeg? Well, the future will no doubt take care of that question. Meanwhile, let's see the first meeting between the mysterious visitor and Candy Clark as the hotel chambermaid who becomes his mistress.
I'll take that. Oh, no, I'll take the stairs.
Spy flights.
Oh.
Do you want me to go
keep on going.
Oh, God. Oh, God. God. Oh. Are you all right? It's all right. You're all right now. We're on the 5th floor. Oh, God. Oh, Lord. Oh, you're gonna be okay. Oh. Lord. Scott? Is you okay?
She must be a very strong girl, you know. Well, just as a matter of interest, here's another version of what that film is about. It's the version according to Buck Henry in a recent interview in America.
The Man Who Fell to Earth is not necessarily about a man, certainly not about the earth, and as far as I can see, contains no falling whatsoever. And in this respect, encapsulates the ambivalence, if not the ambiguity, of all art as we know it today.
I don't think he can be serious. Do you think he can be serious? Hope he's not serious. The Man Who Fell to Earth was made on location in New Mexico and was financed by British Lion, with a little help from its friend, the National Film Finance Corporation. Ignoring the predominance of Americans in the cast, it is in fact a truly British film aimed at an international market, and that's pretty unusual these days. About 2/3 of the production money for British pictures still comes from America. As the Prime Minister's Working Party, the Prime Minister at the time, you may remember, was a man called Wilson, well, as that Working Party reported recently, in economic terms, many of the greatest successes of British film talent have assisted the US economy far more than they've helped the British. Absurd perhaps, but true. Largely because British companies and British bankers are reluctant to invest in films. Meanwhile, the general state of the British industry is neatly summed up by the fact that the screen version of James Herriot's bestseller, It Shouldn't Happen to a Vet, has been financed by the Reader's Digest, another British boost to the American economy, no doubt. I've not actually read any of Mr. Herriot's books about the day-to-day life of a Yorkshire vet, but I'm sure the loss is mine and not his. Certainly It Shouldn't Happen to a Vet is an extremely pleasant film, gently anecdotal and full of mildly bucolic humour, and distinguished in its early stages by a very moving performance from a group of stricken cows. Well, no British audience can resist that kind of stuff, especially as the animals invariably have the last laugh. This is the second of Mr. Herriot's books to be filmed. In the first, All Creatures Great and Small, Simon Ward played the author and Anthony Hopkins his partner. This time, John Alderton appears as James Herriot and Colin Blakely as the partner, and most engaging they are too. The part of Mr. Herriot's wife is played, as before, by the very attractive Lisa Harrow, and the storyline takes us amiably along to the birth of the Herriots' first child and the outbreak of the Second World War. The film has its world premiere in Brighton this week, and as a preview of what to expect, here's exactly the kind of thing that shouldn't happen to a vet.
Good evening. I got a message to call.
On account of a bird, you're very good with birds.
The only fellow we know can trim a budgie's beak and make the bugger sing.
It's Sam's bird, you see. He's a bit sick.
All right. Where is she?
Show him, son.
In there. What sort of bird?
A ladybird.
Oh, hell, she'd run off again. Would you believe that?
Oh, come on, Peck, come on. Where are you? Come on, Peck, come on.
It's all right. I've got her.
Bad news, I'm afraid. She's dead.
He'll kill anything with this lad.
What did she die of?
She died of thirst.
Oh, well, it's a nasty disease, that. Very contagious.
Highly infectious. 5 pints, love.
Right. Oh, that'll be 2 and 3 halfpenny. I'll want off somebody.
Are you having one?
Oh. Oh, thank you. Yeah, make that 6, will you?
Oh, that's very kind of you.
From time to time in this series, I'll be talking to various well-known persons, beginning tonight with Miss Sophia Loren, who's not only an Oscar winner, but was once voted, as I may have mentioned, Macaroni Woman of the Year by the Macaroni Manufacturers of America. A very rare honour indeed. Though I don't see how she could have consumed that much macaroni and still look the way she does today. Well, everyone knows how she looks today, so let's see how she looked at the very beginning of her career as a small part player in an Italian opera movie made in 1950.
So you're not interested in the story I've been telling your friend?
You all talk about the same old thing.
Conchita, eh? I like you, Conchita.
Let go of me! Let go of me! Let go of me!
Well, I know I said she was a small part player, but the parts don't look that small to me. If the record books are correct, she must have been 15 when that picture was made, and that being so, 15-year-olds aren't what they were. Anyway, Miss Loren is now 41, so I'm assured by her publicity man, and very rich, and has embarked on her 69th film. She's made a good many pictures with the Italian director Vittorio De Sica, several Hollywood movies, and even a musical, Man of La Mancha. At present, she's filming The Cassandra Crossing in Switzerland for the Greek director George Cosmatos. It's a suspense thriller about a killer virus at large on a train, sort of Plague on the Occident Express. I went recently to Bâle to talk to her aboard the train.
You know, Cassandra Crossing, the picture we're doing, is the name of a bridge suspended on the, how do you say, a void?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's the story of this train running towards that bridge. And they're on the train about 1,000 people. And every character who plays in this film, they are on this train.
What attracted you to that particular film? Because you must get offered all manner of films, and this is what was there special about this one that you wanted to do it?
Well, the character was very intriguing because it's a very ironic character, and I always try to hide my emotions and my hesitations towards behind a wall of how do you say sarcasm. It's nice. It's very. It belongs. It fits my nature.
When you are filming now, do you still get nervous? You said once, quite recently, that you were nervous still when you were filming, and you had to have a warm, happy atmosphere around you. Is that still true?
Well, I always like to build around me an atmosphere of family. I need friends. I like to be surrounded by people that I like and most of all that I understand.
Is that because you don't have confidence in yourself?
No, no. I like to love people and I like people to love me.
You know, over the years you've played a great variety of different films. On what basis do you pick each part to do as it comes along?
Well, I don't know. It depends. It depends first of all on the story, and then on the director who is going to do the story. And there are so many elements that play before deciding to make a picture that it's not only one, really.
In this film, of course, you've got a new director, really, haven't you?
Yes, I liked him very much because, first of all, he believes in movies very much. He's really he adores, he does his work with so much enthusiasm. And I saw his work. He did a film called Massacre in Rome, which was really a wonderful film, and I was very much impressed by it.
And that's why you were happy to work with him this time?
Yes, yes.
How would you describe yourself as an actress? Because, again, I've been reading up about you, as you can see, and I believe you once said that you were not the kind of actress who can do a role she doesn't believe in by falling back on tricks.
Yes.
What kind of actress would you call yourself? A modest shrug.
I don't know. I am... I don't really know. I do things that I believe in. And I never have any tricks when I make pictures. And I never like to trick an audience.
How much, then, do you feel that, do you need to work now?
I think there is a need for me to work. I enjoy my work very much. I enjoy my profession very much. I don't think I could live without working, without being an actress anymore.
You get restless between films?
Restless if... No, not restless because I have a family now. I have 2 children that I enjoy very much. But besides that, I think that a woman needs to work. I mean, for me, it's a need to work. I enjoy it immensely.
How much do you think that luck has helped in your career, and how much do you think that you make your own luck?
Well, there's no luck if you don't help it, really.
There's no luck?
If you don't help it. I mean, you have to help your luck.
Well, you had to help it quite a lot at the beginning, didn't you? Because you were, again, I remember you once saying that when you first started acting, your eyes were too big, you thought your nose was too big, your mouth was too wide, you were too tall.
Well, it's still like that, but...
It looks all right from where I'm sitting, I must say. Was it hard at the very beginning?
I think it was as hard as for everybody else, or for every other girl who starts in this business. It's always hard to start with.
So did you have to push very hard?
You have to believe in what you're doing strongly, and you have to have a drive, and you have to know more or less what you want, what are you aiming at.
Yes. Let's talk about some of your other films. There's, for instance, 2 Women, for which you won the Oscar.
Yeah.
That was De Sica, was it not? Who directed that? Yes. And of course you made one of his last but one film, I think.
I made many films with him, and his last film too. Yes.
Do you have any particularly good memories of him? What kind of a man was he to work with?
Well, you know, my relationship with De Sica cannot be compared with anyone else of my career, really. He was my first true teacher. When we were working together, just a small gesture or a look to settle a scene. We didn't need much words to say. We trusted each other terribly, and it was wonderful working with him.
Somewhat awe-inspiring lady, that one. She always seems to me to be about 150% female. Well, mention of Oscars there reminds me that this year's Academy Awards will be handed out, no doubt to the deserving and the undeserving alike, in Hollywood tomorrow night. One film, The Hindenburg, which has just opened in London, has already got 2 Oscars in advance for special visual and sound effects. I don't wish to hurt its feelings, but if it's hoping to add any more to those 2, I reckon it's in for an awful disappointment. The plot purports to tell the story of what happened to the Hindenburg on its final ill-fated journey from Frankfurt to New Jersey in 1937. And just to illustrate those visual and sound effects, here it is, taking off.
Did you know we're cabin mates?
Are we?
Yes, I feel honored. I hope the Colonel doesn't mind sharing quarters with me.
Delighted.
Nobody actually knows what did happen to the Hindenburg, except that it went down in flames, killing 37 of the 97 people on board. Robert Wise's film argues that it was blown up by an anti-Nazi plot that went wrong, but the film is so careful not to offend anyone that outside Hitler there seem to have been only about 2 Nazis in the whole of Germany, and one of those was Goebbels. Still, there we are, stuck with this anti-Nazi plot, and George C. Scott charged with the task of foiling it. Mr. Scott, of course, is always impressive, but on this occasion he wanders through the film like a man who's booked himself on the wrong package tour and is regretting it bitterly. Also aboard are sundry red herrings in the shape of Burgess Meredith and Gig Young, and also such stock characters from melodrama as the woman with a past, the woman with a secret, the woman fleeing from the Nazis, and the woman with a deaf daughter awaiting her at the airport. Just to keep the cast list down, all these women are neatly wrapped up in one parcel and played, as well as could be expected in the circumstances, by Anne Bancroft. As disaster movies go, it's fairly weary stuff, although the crash itself, filmed in black and white and incorporating actual newsreel footage, is impressively done. But even then, the use on the soundtrack of that famous eyewitness radio report simply underlines the shallowness of the rest of the film. Still, let's have a look now at one of the exchanges between the stars of the picture, Mr. Scott and Miss Bancroft.
By all means, come right in, Franz.
Where did you get the lighter?
Our radio operator is hot-blooded.
Give it to me, Countess. Behave, Ursula. You know it's dangerous.
I've learned the new game. Breaking all the rules. It's much more fun for people like us than those shoe clerks and butchers in their brown shirts. Because, my darling, we made the rules.
I made this one.
Go ahead, take it. Help yourself to anything else. That's the official policy now, isn't it? They've taken my house and my land.
So I heard. How generous of you.
Generous? I scream bloody murder. Oh, Franz, if I told you what was going on at Peeneman.
You don't know. No one knows. If they thought you knew, you would never be allowed out of the country. Listen to me. No questions asked or answered. You have made a great sacrifice for the fatherland. Do you understand me? Good.
Why anyone would want that wretched island, I'll never know. Did I tell you, Franz, I managed to get rid of it? Trudy will be delighted. Oh, Franz, she's growing up so nicely. She'll be at the airfield. Perhaps you'll see her.
Beautiful child. I heard you say she was going to school in Boston. That's marvelous.
And doing very well. It's the best school for the deaf, I'm told. She's learning to speak and lip read. Maybe this summer we'll...
As I said, the Hindenburg has already got 2 Oscars, and I wonder who'll win the others. It's anybody's guess, really. The Academy Award voters are such a motley bunch that they're capable of any outlandish decision. For Best Film, well, you can take your pick from Stanley Kubrick's visually beautiful Barry Lyndon, Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon, whose star, Al Pacino, is also up for Best Actor, the lucrative Jaws, directed by 27-year-old Steven Spielberg, Robert Altman's ambitious and impressive Nashville, and Milos Forman's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, whose star, Jack Nicholson, is up for Best Actor too. All very good movies, actually, but I reckon the award might go to Jaws, because it's taken most money, and they're very fond of money in Hollywood. Well, we'll know all tomorrow night. What we know already, though, is that a special Oscar will be given to Mary Pickford, who is now 82 and even richer than Sophia Loren, and lives a curious, reclusive life at Pickfair, the Beverly Hills mansion she built with her husband, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. According to her biographer, Robert Windler, she took to her bed in 1965 for no other reason than that she felt like it, and has been there ever since, drinking whiskey and water and discouraging all visitors. People remember me most as a little girl with long golden curls, she says. I don't want them to see me as a little old lady. Rather sad, I think, although, as it seems to be what she's chosen for herself, I imagine she'd rightly regard any words of pity as an impertinence. So let's remember her as she was. America's sweetheart, a little girl with long golden curls. The commentary is by Mary Pickford herself, and the montage was compiled by Philip Jenkinson. I'll be back next Sunday. Until then, good night.
I wanted to be America's tragedian. I wanted to be a Bernhardt of America. But I was thwarted. I was never allowed to do it. And then I began to be typed, that I had to play little girls. And I couldn't be an artist. I couldn't be someone that was away from myself. I had to wear short dresses and socks and little shoes and long curls. But I don't regret it now.